Hello, everybody. Today we're talking about research methods. And this is not just for public speaking, this is for anything that you need to do in the future in your college career in terms of learning how to do proper research. Now, in your next speech, the informative speech, it's the first time that I'm asking you to do research. And it's really crucial that you do, well, of course, proper research in order to maintain credibility, right? So if you remember, credibility is why we should trust you and the things that you're telling us in your speech. And so to be credible, we need to know that you've done your research and that you've done the most accurate, credible research possible. So today we're going to talk about a few things. So first, you needed to have found your topic already before you ever start doing research. One big mistake I find people make is that they try to do research first to see what kind of topic they should be interested in, and it actually wastes a lot of time. So making sure that you've found your topic and even found your main points that you want to say in the speech is crucial before you start actually doing the research. The second thing that we'll talk about is determining what info you need before you hit the internet. Third, we'll talk about how to actually evaluate internet research once you're doing the research. And then lastly, we'll talk about how to have certain techniques that you can use in the search for good, credible sources. That should save you a lot of time because research online can get really confusing and also take a very long time. So we're going to try and be able to do proper research in a shorter amount of time. All right, so let's first talk about determining support. So you've already chosen your topic. Now, to determine what type of research you need to do, you want to first create those main points of your speech, right? So if I'm using my example, my thesis is to inform my students about how to manage depression and anxiety by doing 3 things daily: meditation, yoga, and breathing techniques. So those are my 3 main points: meditation, yoga, and breathing techniques. So using these 3 main points, let's try to think about what we need, right? Now, when you're thinking of what kind of support or research I'm going to need, I might want to first think about, well, what examples or stories could I use in my speech? Okay, these could be, personal stories. It could be testimony, meaning somebody else's story. And what examples will I use to make those, I guess the stories that I'm telling, what is going to make it more interesting to my audience? What ideas or points can I develop with either personal experience or research? Now I'm going to go into depth with this. Ultimately, I think to have a very credible speech, you probably want to do both, right? You might want to give your own personal experience, but then back it up with research that's actually been conducted on it. Because if you just say, well, obviously, global warming isn't real because they said it was supposed to be 80 degrees today and it wasn't, that's your personal experience from that day and your personal opinion, right? If, however, you said something that backed it up with research after giving us your personal experience, maybe we would actually believe it, right? And then you want to ask, are all of my claims backed? So any claim that you make, or again, a claim is anything that you state as a fact, you want to make sure that once you're done writing the speech and you have a fair amount of information of what you want to say, you need to be able to then look at all the claims that you're making. And that's one way to see, okay, well, this is something I'm stating as fact. Now I have to go online or in a library, but right now, because we're all sequestered in our homes, we can't do that. But once you look at those claims that you made, that's a quick way to go online and say, okay, this I need support for. All right, so let's look at an example. So I might look at my speech before it's made while I have my 3 main points. And I might say, okay, main point 1 is meditation. So I think for that one, I want to definitely use a personal story that I had about how meditation got me out of a panic attack when we were flying to New York, right? So I might want to start with that personal anecdote, but that should not be my only support that I'm using as evidence that meditation is good for anxiety and depression, right? Just because it happened to me doesn't just because the meditation helped me in that one story doesn't mean that meditation is scientifically proven to help reduce anxiety or depression. So I might want to tell my story to make it more personal, but then I want to back it up with scientific research that shows the physiological effects that meditation has, right? So I'm saying in my personal story, meditation was able to get me out of a panic attack when I was alone flying to New York. But scientific research also shows that this is not a one-off experience. 1 out of 10 people, blah, 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 blah. Find some sort of support for what your first claim is, which is meditation got me out of a panic attack. Thus, meditation is good for reducing anxiety and depression. And here's how I know this using scientific research. Now, my main point too is yoga. So I still want to use research, right? Maybe I start with a statistic on how yoga that's being used in certain cultures, I don't know, maybe certain cultures that use yoga handle stress better, and maybe I could find a research study that correlates those two. I might not find that though, right? So part of when we're doing research, I can kind of go into it thinking, well, this is the research I'd like to find, but you have to be flexible and know that you are having a hypothesis, right? You're making an assertion that I'm going to be able to find research that proves that cultures that do yoga handle stress better than cultures that don't do yoga. But I could actually go into the research and find, oh, that's not true at all. So now I have to adjust, and I don't want to share false information with my audience. So let's find what the research actually says and share that factual information. So if that didn't work, maybe I'll think about, okay, well then what can I talk about yoga? My point is that yoga, right, is going to help students manage depression and anxiety. So maybe I change my parameters for my search to benefits of yoga, right? And then let the research lead me to find what the truth is rather than trying to find something that proves what I already thought was true, especially if it doesn't exist. Now, the last one is breathing techniques. You can use any other thing that you're thinking of, but ultimately you want to kind of outline throughout your speech, well, what kind of support do I need for the claims that I'm making that meditation, yoga, and breathing techniques are good for reducing depression and anxiety. Okay, so once you have a good idea of what it is that you're trying to prove or trying to say or trying to teach, you then want to start doing that research on the actual internet. Now, your first inclination might be to go and search on Google or search on Wikipedia. Please don't do that first. We're going to talk about later kind of what the structure is for searching, but let's look at what you need to actually do to evaluate whatever research you're finding online to see if it's credible. Right? Because you could find research almost anywhere on the internet, but you have to run it through a process to make sure that it's actually accurate, right? So we want to make sure that it's reliable, we can trust it, we want to make sure it's authoritative, we're going to talk about what that means, that it's current, most current to date, and is it complete? And we'll talk about what that means. So let's start first with, is it reliable? So when you're looking for research online, right? The biggest thing that you want to ask, or the first thing you want to ask is it trustworthy and reliable? Now for online news sources, this is specifically important to look at. And one of the first things that you want to do is check the URL, right? A .com, probably not a great source to use. Why is that? Now that's because .coms anybody can make. Right? You don't have to be a professor of law. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to be credible in any area to post whatever you want to post online. So a .com, you would need to go through a longer and lengthier process in order to see if it's credible. A .org, a .edu, or .gov are more reliable, but they're not foolproof, meaning that you still have to go through a process to make sure it's accurate, right? A .org is just an organization, whether they are a paid organization or nonprofit organization. They often have bias, right? Because organizations are a group of people that have a particular way of thinking. They've come together for a specific purpose. And so oftentimes they'll have bias. A .edu is obviously, an education produced website. So for instance, our institution's website is a .edu, and each institution is going to have their own ways of thinking and bias. So it doesn't mean that they are not credible all around, but it means that you have to search to make sure that they're credible. .govs, more reliable out of those three. They're usually vetted between a lot of people who are knowledgeable in whatever subject they're posting about, right? The FBI website, the CDC, all of those things are going to have more accurate information than a .edu or a .org, depending on the topic you're looking for. Now, whatever it is that you're looking for, if you go to a .gov and you're looking at the CDC, either way, you want to look out for bias. Now, bias comes in a few ways, right? I mean, a lot of the times if they're using really harsh language, that often will signify that they're biased towards one way or another. If they're name calling or, kind of finger pointing, those things would be very clear examples of bias. Bias would also be looking at who paid for the website, right? So certain organizations, especially if they're religious organizations often have bias based on their religious preferences, right? But also in terms of who's paying for the website, we might be looking at a website that seems really reliable, and then we find out that it's paid for by, a specific Christian organization, or it's paid for by an extremely liberal or extremely conservative politician. So we want to make sure that we know where the information is coming from and who's supporting the information. Now, news sources are good, but they often carry that heavy bias. And so some of the ones that we want to look out for, I'm going to talk about later. But the next question we want to ask after, do we think that this is reliable? Part of answering that question is who wrote it. So part of how we see if it's a reliable, trustworthy website or article is who wrote that article. What are their credentials, right? What makes them able to talk about this in a professional, profound way that somebody else who's not educated in that area cannot? So if we're looking at an article about abortion, right? Who wrote it is going to tell us a lot about whether we can trust this information or not. If it's a person who is just a protester who teaches elementary school, I'm not going to look at that and say this information is absolutely correct. Now, if it's an abortion website where it is written by a doctor who performs abortions and they're talking about, I don't know, the experience of getting an abortion, yeah, I'm going to trust that a lot more because they are a doctor who actually performs them, right? So their credentials are doctor, performs abortions, is able to speak about it in at least the way that would be related to a doctor, right? Now, if I wanted to talk to somebody about, let's say, well, let's use my example, right? Let's talk about yoga. Now, if I'm trying to find an article about yoga and I found some website based on, let's say this social media influencer, I guess is what they're called now, social media influencer who does yoga every day and even teaches it to people on YouTube. Are they credible in terms of their credentials? Now, if they have I'm sure they don't have a degree, but what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, if they've learned how to do yoga and got a credential for it, so to speak, and then have taught it in a place where they are revered for being able to teach it, right? They actually have credentials to teach yoga. Then yeah, I would say that they're authoritative. They have the credibility. If it's just a social media influencer who likes yoga and wants to share their own yoga routine, I'm not going to think that that is very credible because I don't know if they know what are some dangerous moves. if it's safe to do that particular yoga routine from someone who has not actually taken a course or have credentials in it. So hopefully that makes sense. You want to know who wrote it. Are they personally biased in any way? Who do they work for? And what makes them credible to talk about it? Then we want to ask, is this information current or complete? Now, in terms of currency, it means when was it published? You want the most up-to-date information. Now, if I'm going to give a speech about obesity in the United States, and I'm using statistics from 2005, my speech is not credible. And that's because it's too old, right? A lot changes in a culture in 15 years, right? So that's way too old. We would need to be able to find something that is the most up to date. I would say, depending on your topic, even something 2 or 3 years ago is a long time. But again, it depends on the topic, right? If I'm talking about yoga, yoga's been around for such a long time that if I found something from 2017, it's probably going to be applicable today. But again, I want to do my research to make sure I found the most recent. So the same thing with, especially if you're doing a speech about food. For instance, GMOs, milk, eggs, I mean, all of those topics have changed, I mean, yearly from whether they're good for you or bad for you. You know, 1 year it's good, 1 year it's bad. And so, especially with stuff like food and diets, you want to make sure that you're finding that most up-to-date information. All right, now, in terms of it being complete, what that means is you do not want to read half of an article and say, oh yeah, this totally applies, and then take a piece from it and use it as your example. Because a lot of the time, if we're cherry picking, right, we're taking what applies to our speech, we are not actually reading the entire article, and that might not be what they actually intended or mean, right? So sometimes we'll look at a research study and we'll say, oh, this one sentence totally proves my point, but that sentence was in the context of something else, and that's not what they actually intended. So what you need to do is, if it's for a news article online, read the entire article. You cannot take one sentence and make it apply, right? That would be false information. If it is a journal, right, like a peer-reviewed journal article, you want to read the discussion and results sections. So in a peer-reviewed journal article, that's kind of the area you want to be in if you can find research, because peer-reviewed means it's gone through a lengthy process of people in the field reading this person's research and having to edit it, change it, make sure it's up to date and it's completely accurate before allowing other people to put it in their journals, right? So it goes through a long process of being checked for accuracy. Now they're very long, and so oftentimes students will want to just read the abstract, which is just the summary of what this article is about, and a very brief summary of their hypothesis and their findings. But oftentimes it is not accurate because, accurate in terms of what they actually found, because they're trying to get you to come read the whole thing. So what you actually want to do is read the discussion and results sections, which help you identify what it really is. So don't cherry pick, don't take something out of context. You want to be able to have the full information before you move on. Okay, so what you do want peer-reviewed journal articles and trusted news outlets, right? So this is partially how we check that something is accurate. So for peer-reviewed journal articles, I just told you, right? It's something that has been done by a PhD candidate or somebody who is at least in a master's program. It has gone through other PhD doctors and people in the field have read it, reviewed it, made sure it's accurate and up to date before it gets published. So those are kind of done for you, right? It's already checked for accuracy, it's checked for bias, it's checked for all those things. So the quickest, easiest way is that if your topic applies to something like a peer-reviewed journal article, go there first, because then you have accurate information. For trusted news outlets, those are harder, especially we're kind of in a world right now where we don't know which kind of outlets are being less biased or more honest, but every year they do come out with kind of a list of what are the most trusted. And some of the most trusted right now that follow this publisher's, code of ethics, meaning that they want to stay ethical, as unbiased as possible, and give accurate, up-to-date information, you want to start with some of these websites. This is not a complete list, but it is a good starting place for what you want to look at. So New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, the BBC, National Public Radio, so that's NPR, The Economist, The New Yorker. Now, while some of these you might say, oh, they're a little bit more left-leaning or they're a little bit more right-leaning. Yes, you want to look out for bias, but you also want to look at how they're telling a story, right? Do they offer both sides of the issue without bias, right? So something you want to look at is how the stories are being written as well. Now, you do not, I repeat, do not use pop culture websites and do not use Fox News. So Fox News, in addition to Huffington Post, are kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum for bias. Fox News is incredibly biased in terms of being a very conservative-leaning website. Huffington Post is the other way, right? It's a left-leaning website, so it's more liberal, but both of these are offering information kind of without filter and without a focus on the truth or the whole story, right? So these outlets do not work for you, and in this class, I will not take them as credible sources. You also should not and will not use BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed is a pop culture website. Sometimes they'll talk about current stories or things happening in our culture and in our world, but they are mostly there for entertainment. They are not really there for credible news. Lastly is Wikipedia. Now I'm gonna show you how you can use Wikipedia, but ultimately you don't wanna go and take something right off of Wikipedia and then quote it or cite it. I'm not gonna take Wikipedia as a credible source. And that's because anybody can write in Wikipedia. Anybody. You can go in and you can edit whatever you want. And so we have no way of knowing who is credible giving information in Wikipedia and who's not. So do not use Wikipedia as your source. I will show you something you can do with Wikipedia that might work for you though. Okay, so those are how we tell whether our information that we're looking for is credible, is current, blah, blah, blah. Now we want to look at, okay, so how does it actually work when we're searching online, okay? So here are some techniques. Now we're going to use my example of the how to reduce stress and anxiety in college students by using my 3 main points here, right? Meditation, yoga, and breathing techniques, just so you can use it as an example for how you might do some research. So let's start with, let's just say yoga, right? Now, first of all, you have a great resource for being able to do real research online. So this is where you should go first, is your own college's library website, right? So this is for Pierce College. This is what it looks like for SMC. I'm kind of doing this video for both of you here. Now, you could just start writing right in here, right? So let's type in yoga and see what comes up. We want to start really simple, right? I'm looking for information on yoga. Great. All right, so we have something there. Let's try this as well. Okay. Now, we have 69,000 results. That's actually not as much as I thought it would be. Okay, let's see how much we get with Pierce's website. Ooh, 226,000, almost 227,000 results. That's way too many, right? I don't have the time to go through all of this all day today, right? Now, this is what you would do first, right? If I'm only starting with one word, it's going to give me a lot of results because it's looking for anything that has that one word in it. So there's a few things that we might want to do. If you don't necessarily want to add any more words yet, but you want to narrow the results, scholarly journals is going to give you those peer-reviewed journal articles and articles in general, right? I don't really need any videos. I don't need any books. Book chapters are really hard to kind of sort through. No books themselves, no conferences, articles are where it's at. That's what we want. So let's apply those filters there at Pierce. And let's do it here too. So peer-reviewed journals, and that actually might be the only thing you need to do here. Apply filters. All right, so that took it from 227,000 to 27,000. That's much better. Still a lot. Because if I start looking at this, now what I'm kind of looking for, right, is the benefits of yoga. So we do see one here, potential benefits for people who stutter. I don't know if that's exactly what I'm looking for, right? It might be good as one sub point for the benefits. So I could use that. This one just says yoga. Let's see, integrating yoga into cancer care. Maybe. I don't know what these words are, right? So we're kind of looking at those, but to get more information, we'd want to click on it. And now we see the abstract or the summary. So this says yoga has been demonstrated to modulate autonomic nervous system activity, decreasing, anxiety and stress, and improving quality of life. This preliminary study sought to examine the use of yogic techniques on persons who stutter, given the interaction between physiological arousal/anxiety and stuttering that current multifactorial models of stuttering propose. Okay, now we're getting a little jargony. So it keeps telling us, okay, stuttering severity, anxiety, and experiences regarding stuttering were measured. Okay, great. Now, if I really liked this study, if I really thought, oh, this is gonna work for me, then what I might wanna do is try and find the full article. So it says available online, you'd wanna click there. Here it is, full text availability. It's only one option. And then you would put in, now if I'm on Pierce, I put in my regular login that you would normally log into the regular Pierce website. Now, of course, mine's not gonna work because it doesn't have my current up-to-date information. But you would log in here and then be able to see a screen that allows you to download the PDF, okay? Now, for Santa Monica College, this one has some of the same ones. You might have a different database with these. So you would, let's say that we found this one, we like it, we're gonna look at it. Available online, free e-journal, okay. See where this goes. Now, that's not I don't think that's the one that we're looking for. Okay, this is not exactly what we're looking for, right? This took us to a website rather than the actual journal article itself, right? So maybe we don't use that one. Now there's other ways that you could try and actually find that, but let's make it easy. So let's see, mind body practices and the self, yoga and meditation. Do not quiet the ego, but boost self-enhancement. Okay, maybe that would work for us. Let's see if we can find the full article, because remember, we don't want to just look at the abstract. We want to look at the discussion and results section that really talk about the details of the study. All right, so it doesn't have it. Okay, so this might happen, right? We're going to be looking at a lot of articles and seeing, what we actually have access to and what we might not have access to. So there is one thing that you can do. We know that this is peer reviewed because it's on a database on our institution's website. So one way to kind of troubleshoot this that is possible is you copy the title. This is the only time that I'm telling you that Google Scholar really works for you, because when you look at Google Scholar normally, it doesn't tell you exactly which ones are peer reviewed. So if you go straight here, you're not going to know which ones are accurate and which ones are not. But if I went to my institution's library, see one that I know is peer reviewed, but I can't find it through here for some reason, let's see if we can find it here. Ooh, we may have found it. Let's see. All right. So we did find it, but we need access to it, right? So you might go to institutional access and see if our institution has it. Now this is a SAGE publication. It's a great journal. So one thing that you could do is look directly into a particular database. Now let's see. So we could put the title here. Let's see if it comes up with anything. And it doesn't. So we might not have access to this one through Santa Monica, unfortunately. Now, let's close this. We don't need it anymore. Let's say, did we get access to this one? Right, we can. But We're just not going to right now. Okay, so this is how you would find some of those things. Now, let's say that yoga wasn't enough, right? We're not really finding the exact words that we're looking for. So what I might want to do is to go to advanced search. Now this one, let's go to new search, start over. Let's go to advanced search. Okay, and they're going to look the same, right? These look pretty similar. So what you're going to do is I put everything here. I don't know if I want books and videos on library shelves. Not right now with the coronavirus. Textbooks on reserve. I don't want to go to the library and have to take a textbook out. So let's just keep it to articles, books, and more. Okay. Now, the first word we use, there's a few options. So when you select down here, you can look for a title, an author or creator, a subject, or an ISBN. ISBN is for books. Right now, the word I'm using is not, I'm not looking for an author or a creator. It might be a title, but it's more of a subject. So I'm going to go subject contains yoga. And so this is crucial. When you're looking for stuff in a database, it's going to ask you if you want, what kind of words you want in it. Now, if I put yoga, that's going to be definitely in the subject of all of these articles. So it's going to look for any article that has the word yoga in it. If I want it to also contain another word, I would put and. So if I say yoga and benefits, it's going to look for articles that have those two words. However, if I'm like, benefits might be the word I'm looking for, but maybe it won't, I can also put in or, meaning it's looking for any articles that say benefits or yoga. However, that means that it'll look for articles that say yoga, but then other articles that just have the word benefits. So that's not going to work for us. So let's keep and. The not that you see here is really only used for words that have double meaning, right? So let's think about that. Drag, right? Drag is a word that is used for many different meanings. Drag racing, as in cars. Drag like taking a drag off of a cigarette, or drag in terms of drag queens, right? So if we are looking for something like drag queens, we would want to say drag queens, and then go here and say not racing, or drag in this area, not racing. So that it knows that we're looking for things that have to do with drag, but not the racing type of drag, something else. And so part of what you can do also is that if you're looking for two words that are consecutive, then you would put them both in this line, right? So if I wanted to find articles that literally have the two words yoga's benefits, then I would do that there, but it only finds articles that have those two right next to each other exactly the way that you put them, and that limits your search. So let's just start with this. Let's find any articles that have somewhere in the article the word yoga and the word benefits, right? And maybe we even give us a little bit more room by just putting benefit. So let's search and see what we come up with. Okay, so let's see. Yoga, cardiovascular benefit, all right. Can yoga practices benefit health? Okay. Cardiovascular benefit again. Now, do we have our scholarly journals selected? No, we don't. So let's do that. Apply filters. Okay. Okay. So let's see what we got. Additional benefit of yoga to standard lifestyle modification. Yoga improves quality of life. Ooh, and benefit finding in women undergoing radiotherapy for breast cancer. Benefit of yoga for efficient functioning. That could work. Okay. Ooh, impact of yoga on quality of life and psychological distress in caregivers for patients with cancer. Yoga for chronic pain management. I mean, we have a lot of options here. All right. Let's see what this one is about. Okay, so we know that it's peer reviewed. It's open access, which means that you might not even need to sign in to get it. Let's see, they have a very short summary. So this might not help us understand really what this is going to be about. Okay, so let's see if we can figure out what this is really about. Oh boy, sorry y'all, I'm not signing in. Okay, let's try it here. Yoga, benefits. So we have and selected, great. Let's see what we find. Okay, we don't want books, we want peer-reviewed articles. Apply the filter. Well, this one has a lot more results than the one at Pierce. Okay, benefits of yoga on mental and physical health. This looks good. Okay, so it doesn't have the abstract. So let's go straight to the article itself. Okay, so it's going to give us this kind of website here. Now let's find what the title was. Some of these are not super well integrated, but we're going to do our best. Cross your fingers and let's see what comes up. Okay. Let's go back. I think it's only this one that's allowing us to have it. Okay. We're not seeing what we're looking for here. So what's one of the things that we can do? Let's go back to Google Scholar. Okay, and we're not really seeing this here either. Okay, so that is not working for us either. Now this is true to research, right? You might run into problems like this over and over and over again. So we just kind of have to keep workshopping it, right? We've got to figure out how we can find how to do this. So let's try and find another one. Okay, here's another one about the benefits of yoga and psychological well-being. Okay, let's log in. Okay, we're getting, well, we thought we were getting closer. So it's interesting, a lot of these articles that are coming up on your database are not actually able to be found anymore. And sometimes I don't really know why that happens, right? I don't know what this is. Let's just submit it and see what happens. Otherwise, we can do our other option. Okay. Okay. So this one needs us to sign in as well. I mean, you could always subscribe if you wanted to, but ultimately you should have access through Santa Monica College or Pierce College. It's interesting that this is not finding a lot of the articles that are here, right? So this is frustrating and strange, but it's something that happens. All right, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna fight through this. Now this is about prenatal specifically, but now I'm just on the hunt to even find if any of these work. Okay, yay, we found one. Okay, so let's say that it was that tough for us every single time to find an article that actually allowed us to get the PDF, right? So it's over here. Now we have access to the PDF. We can read the actual, journal article, right? So this is now the article. We can look at it. Maybe we don't need that information, but we look up here and we say psychological benefits of yoga for pregnancy, right? That could be, you know what? That could be one of my subpoints. Let's say, okay, I'm talking about the benefits of yoga. One of those benefits is for pregnancy, right? Let's see what it says here. So they cite somebody else about about a study they did about yoga training, and over 16 weeks, they improved their quality of life and interpersonal relationships. So I could use that as an example. Now this is where it gets a little interesting, right? If someone in your article that you're reading actually has cited another article, you have to kind of cite almost both, right? So if they're citing Rakshani et al. 2010. That's the actual article that you would be citing. So what we could do is go all the way down to the bottom where they cite other people, right? And let's see if we can find Rakshani right here. And that's kind of the article that we would want to cite. There's other ways to do it as well, where you can say, you know, according to whoever wrote this article, which is Kimberly Bethany Bonura, in which she cites the Rakshani citation, right? So you could do it that way as well. But ultimately, we've actually stumbled upon something that's really, really helpful in doing research. Now, it might take us a long time to get to that first article that we not only think it works perfectly for our speech, but also actually gives us access, right? Because again, this is a normal process of doing research, is that sometimes you don't have access, sometimes you can't find the article anymore. So what we just did is a very accurate representation of what research feels like. It's frustrating, it takes a long time, but once we find that first article, there's something beautiful that we can do. So this article is perfect for us, for my speech. Now, what I want to do is do something called a citation search. So once I found this perfect article, right, I love everything about it, it works really well, I still need at least 3 other sources in my speech to be able to give you a really full and credible speech in terms of the research I'm using. So you go down to the references and you see who they cited. Read the titles of who they cited, because any peer-reviewed journal article has done the research themselves to see what is the most core piece of information in that area of interest, right? So let's see, they've done American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, maybe not what I need for my yoga speech, right? Exercise during pregnancy, again, not something I need. Excuse me. Initial evaluation of yoga program as therapeutic intervention for depression. Now that one would work. Now, what I probably want to copy is the title, okay? Then we would want to go back to your website, you know, the school's website. Let's clear the search. Let's go to title, because now I'm looking for a specific title. Okay, so we type that in. Let's hope that we have access to this. We don't for Santa Monica, okay? Let's go to title. Let's clear the search. So sorry, let's go to title again. Paste the title. Let's just see what comes up. Okay, so we don't have access there. But because it was in a peer-reviewed journal article as something they cited, maybe we can, oh, that's another article I found earlier. Maybe we can then go back to Google Scholar and paste it and see if we can find it here. Okay, found that. Okay, so it gives us this if we subscribe and log in. And to be honest, this is something that you're going to run into. Your institutions, so Santa Monica College or Pierce College or wherever it is going to pay for database access, but not all, right? So some articles like this, you might not have access to, sorry, some databases you might not have access to. So you can always subscribe. You don't, a lot of them charge you and we don't necessarily want that, right? But if it doesn't charge you, that's something that you could do to get access, okay? All right, so we didn't find that, but ultimately the idea stands, is that we're looking through here to see if there's any that we can use that would work for us, right? Because you're kind of following this method of they peer-reviewed it, they used it for their speech, and we know, or sort of for their article, and we know that this article is credible. So we can keep looking here. Effective yogic exercises on physical and mental health. That's a good one, right? Impact of induced yoga relaxation training on stress level among minority groups. Another thing you could do, right? So we could copy it, paste it, see if we find it, but ultimately you're gonna have to keep going through this method of searching for it, seeing if you have access, right? It's a pain in the butt, but it is something that you are going to have to do, right? Now, earlier I had found, let's see if I can find it, another article. We'll get there later. All right, so here's another method that you can do. So it's the same thing as the citation search. This is the only way that you are really able to use Wikipedia in a way that is more accurate. So you never want to look at here and say, oh, okay, great. Yoga dated back to pre-Vedic Indian traditions. Wonderful, copy, let's paste it into my speech, right? No, we don't know if that is accurate. So whenever you're reading Wikipedia and you see something that would work for you, let's say there's a broad variety of yoga schools, practices, and goals. They have this little marker here, and that's their citation. So White, 2011, Yoga, Brief History of an Idea. Okay, let's see where this takes us. Now, I have no idea if this is a peer-reviewed journal article or not, right? That actually kind of looks like maybe a book. And so, okay, we don't know if this is totally accurate. So what do? This is where we would look at who wrote it, right? If I don't know if this is an accurate peer-reviewed journal article, I could copy that name, literally just type it into Google, and let's see what some of their credentials are, right? So this is David Gordon White, okay? Indologist, not really sure what that means, but I can go look it up. But then I see, okay, so he went to the University of Chicago and the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We might want to see what he majored in there and what he got his degree in and what type of degree. But then I also see that he actually won a Guggenheim Fellowship for Humanities Award. Now that is an actual accredited, valuable, and credible award to be given, right? So now I'm starting to think, okay, he's also written a lot of books. All those things on their own don't mean that they're credible, but them together is kind of telling me, okay, it's giving me a picture that he has been in this field for a while. He's won an award for it. He has, degrees from credible universities. I could probably trust that what this article that he's written about is fairly accurate information, right? So that's one way to check to see if it's an accurate article, whether or not you can find it as a peer-reviewed journal article. And so that's something that you can do with Wikipedia, is actually, sorry, I have so many windows open. This is bad practice, everybody. Don't do what I'm doing here, which is, having too many windows open, it makes it confusing. So the other way to do this is that, I found that one particular one, but you can do it for all of these. The only added element is that you need to make sure that they're credible. But a lot of these actually show whether it has the PDF or not with this little image. And so you'll know you have access to at least those. So again, I don't know what this is about. The title is Techniques of Hatha Yoga Are Not Taught in Sanskrit Texts. I don't think I need that for mine. But again, look through these and see if it applies to your topic. Then check it out for credibility. And if it works, great, then you have access this way. So those are a few ways to do some of the research. It's difficult. Research is not easy, right? I mean, it's pretty difficult. Ultimately, you just want to start with something simple. Start there. Always click peer-reviewed journal articles. Apply that filter just so you know that everything that's now being shown to you is that, right? We can look at this, see if you have access this way, and hopefully you do. But again, it takes time. Now this one we do, and that's great. So mindfulness meditation, we had instant access to. Woohoo! Yoga, not so much. But also that happens when you have a subject that has a lot of information, right? Because some of it is outdated, some of it's been taken down off the internet, even though it shows up. So just keep plugging away this way, okay? Now, the very last thing we're going to talk about, and this is a very long lecture today, but it's one of the most important. Now that you have found your articles, so let's say that this is one of our articles. Many times on the right-hand side here, you'll see print, you'll see email, you'll see add to folder, you'll see cite. That's a quick way to look at how to cite your article, right? So this has already done it for you. However, let's say that I copy, right? And I go to my speech, and let's say that after my outline, which was right here, I want to start a brand new, I'm going to erase this. I don't need this anymore. So I've done my outline. Let's say that I've filled it all out. Now let's say that my first point of the meditation was whatever we were saying. Where are we? Hold on. Okay. So this article is about 5 ways mindfulness meditation benefits the body. Okay, let's move this close to both of these articles. Okay, so then let's say that under meditation, my first subpoint was mindful meditation. First, I define what mindful meditation is. But my second main point is 5 benefits. Well, let's see, what was it? It was 5 benefits to the body. Okay. And then we'd want to, you know, if we're using all 5 of these, we would need to really look at what those 5 are. Okay. So let's see, we have mindfulness meditation over the short period of 8 weeks increase the amount of gray matter regions in the brain that are involved in learning and memory, regulation of one's emotions, and self-awareness. Now that's a pretty complex sentence. When it's complex and you really feel like you can't say it another way or paraphrase it, maybe we just quote it, okay? So you could add over a short period of 8 weeks, but really we want to talk about their finding, right? And so we would want to put 5 benefits to the body. Now the number 1 benefit, I'm actually going to do as a quote. So this is crucial when you are doing research and you're doing it along these lines, right? That you're saying, okay, so 5 benefits to the body. All of the information that's underneath here is going to be from a certain source. If it's a quote, put it immediately in quotes so you don't forget. Now, when you're quoting, this is all on 1 page, but it's page 136. Now, I don't think we have a specific author. This is done by, you know, American medical technologists, right? So if you don't have an author, then really there's a few things that we need to do. Okay, so first off, we just took a quote from this page and it's page 136. Now in quoting what they've actually said, we also want to put the page number. Now depending on if you're doing MLA or APA, it's going to be a little different. If we don't have, usually if you have an author, you put the last name here and then the page number. But, so what you're going to want to do, at least if you don't have an author, is put the page number here, just so that when your teacher is looking at where you got this quote, I know what page number it was on. Now let's say that we found, okay, the second one is studies have shown that regular meditation helps reduce practitioners' feelings of anxiety. Now this just says studies. We don't know where they got that information. So we might have to find a different article that talks about or different article that is actually a study that proves that it reduces feelings of anxiety and fear. So maybe I don't really want to put that one in unless I find another article or source that proves that. Increases practitioners' empathy for others. Okay, all right. So we can copy that and we'll put it in our, well, sorry, don't copy it. You can paraphrase it or rephrase it. But ultimately, whether you're quoting or you're saying reduces anxiety, what you need to do is cite where you're getting all this information. So let's say that all 5 of these are from this, 5 benefits to the body are all from this one article. So one way that you want to put this in text, right? Because when you're citing, you have to do it in text and as the reference page. Now, if I'm saying that all of these are from the same article, one easy way to do it is to say 5 benefits to the body. According, we do not want that. According to And then we find out who wrote this. Now, this was actually a reprint from Massachusetts General Hospital news release in 2011. Now, 2011 is a little old, but let's just go with it for now. So if this is reprinted from Massachusetts General Hospital news, and we're also seeing that AMT Events is the property of American medical technologists, and they're the ones who produced this, we're going with who it originally came from, right? So reprinted from Massachusetts General Hospital news. So in our speech, we would then say 5 benefits to the body according to Massachusetts General Hospital news in a 2011 article. Then we can say the next benefits, knowing and having our audience know that what we're about to say is all from the same article. Now, if you had just this, you would say it in the speech, but it would be right in front of the quote itself. According to Massachusetts General Hospital news, an increased amount of gray matter in the regions of the brain involved in learning and memory, regulation of one's emotions, and self-awareness was found, right? So I'm sure that this is confusing because, you know, we're talking about a lot, but ultimately there's 2 things you need to do when you're doing the research and putting it into your speech. You need to make sure that if it's a quote, it's quoted, or if it is a paraphrase, it still has the page number and the author after it, and that you put according to, so that you're remembering to say it in the speech as well. Now, once you have done that, you go down to the very bottom, to the last page of your article, or sorry, of your speech, and you want to put in references. And these are all done alphabetically and using hanging indentations. And so remember, we went here and we found this citation. So we can start there. We paste, and a hanging indentation, now actually before I get there, always undo the background that's on it. We don't need that. We want to make sure that it's also in the right font and size that we're looking for. Okay, now a hanging indentation looks like that. I don't know what this is. This is just the URL, which are no longer needed for citations. But it should look something like this, right? And this is MLA. So if we go back here, I chose the MLA, Modern Language Association, and that's easier for you to start learning citations with. APA is another very common one. It's a little bit harder to understand though. So for you, if you're new to this, I would say start with MLA. All right, so we have our first article here. Now there's no author last name, so we're going with F as, you know, the first, if we're alphabetizing. Let's say that we also had this one as part of our yoga research. Okay, now that's another beautiful thing about doing citation searches, is that they've already done it, but you have to make sure that you know whether or not they're doing MLA or APA and keeping it consistent, right? I don't care if you use MLA or APA, but it needs to be one way the whole for every single one. Now S comes after F, so this looks good, but let's make sure we're doing our hanging indentations. And all hanging indentations do are just separate that this is a different article than this one, right? Because we don't want extra spaces. They all should be double spaced, but close together, no extra spaces in between. Right? So I know that I ran through this fairly fast, but what we've talked about so far are how to do internet research and make sure it's credible, how to find an article and either use paraphrasing as what they've talked about or quoting, how to do an in-text citation. And I didn't spend too much time on this. Ultimately, if you have questions, which I'm sure you will because citations are really hard to do, you want to go to Purdue OWL or the Purdue Writing Lab. So you would type that into Google, click it. Now again, I would say, go with the MLA. It's so much easier. And what we see here is we have MLA Style Introduction, Overview and Workshop, and Formatting and Style Guide. let's go to the formatting and style guide and look at all these. We don't need this, go away. That just occurred to me that it was there, so I'm sorry. Over here on the left, we see all of these things that are gonna help us learn how to do citations, right? So while I showed you a very quick tutorial, we wanna be able to do this. So in-text citations, the basics. So those are the things that you're putting in the actual speech, right? When you are citing something, either in a quotation or you're stating a paraphrase from that article, you want to put where you got it from, right? Plagiarism is when we copy and pasted this into our speech without a page number, without an author, without quotation marks, but this is something that we copy and pasted from an article. And for me as a teacher, I see when you have put something in there like that, that you didn't put quotations around or didn't say according to, right? That is called plagiarism. It's stating something as your own. We do not want to do that, right? We want to do this properly. So this will help you figure out how to do that. Now it actually shows you author's last name and the page number from which the quotation or paraphrase is taken must appear in the text, and a complete reference then should appear on the works cited page, which is that last page that we saw all the way down here, right? So they show you a few different ways that you can do in-text citations. If it's an author's name, or for our case, that article was from AMT Events or Massachusetts General Hospital News. So if it's not an author, you would say, you know, the person who published it or where it's from. So Wordsworth, let's say that that was the author's name, stated that romantic poetry was marked by a, and then you do the quote and you put the page number. Now, if it's an article online and there is no page number, so sorry about that. If there is no page number, then you would put the author's name, right? So if this is an online article, you just put the author's name. If there is no author, sorry, if there is no, well, I already said that. If there is no author, then you put who produced it, right? And it'll tell you that. So in-text citations for print sources with a known author, this is what you would do. There's two options. You put the, you know, the person's name here and then the page number, or just the person's name and the page number at the end. In-text citations for print sources by a corporate author, meaning kind of the company, this is what you would do. In-text citations for print sources with no known author. Now, again, these are all print. This is when you're actually reading it as a journal article or a book. And so it gives you all of these different, you know, it tells you how to do it step by step. Citing a work that has multiple authors, it'll show you how to do that. Citing a work, multiple works, so different articles, but the same author, it tells you how to do that. Citing indirect sources. So sometimes you may have to use an indirect source, which is a source cited within another source. We kind of previously mentioned that, right? And so you would say the main article that we were just looking at, and then what they quoted, and then you would say, right, it gets a little difficult, but this tells you how to do it step by step. Okay. These tell you how to do, you know, how to cite something from a film or a lecture or a presentation. I don't think you're going to need that right now. Now, let's say that you were trying to do electronic sources, which is what you're going to be doing, right? This will tell you how to do that. So basic style for citations of electronic sources, including online databases. So that's where we were just looking today. This will tell you how to do that. And this is for the reference page or the works cited page, not in text. In text is pretty straightforward. It's usually just if it's an author, right? It's the person's last name and the page number. If there's no author, you go with who produced it, so the website. If there's no page number, you just don't put the page number. But ultimately, look here for, you know, a sample works cited page, what it should look like, right? They use the hanging indentations. It's in alphabetical order. You can use the URL. They have changed the rule a little bit with whether you have to use it or not. But ultimately, your goal is to try to cite in text when you're quoting something or paraphrasing something from an article, any information that was not yours that you are using from something else. And then you want to put the full citation at the very end of your speech in the references page. So again, I know that this is confusing. It's a lot of steps, but ultimately we want to be better at citing where we're getting information from. We want to be better at telling whether or not information is accurate, right? We want to be better at seeing if it's complete or current. We want to be able to share information in an accurate way, because as we have been able to tell recently in our political kind of situation, we're noticing that it's harder to find out what's real and what's not. And that's because people aren't doing the work to make sure that we are sharing accurate, unbiased information. So this is how you become a better researcher in your future courses and your future careers, but also being an ethical and accurate public speaker, knowing that what information you're sharing with us has been thoroughly researched, right? So that's all I have for you today. I know that there's going to be a lot of questions about this. Do not hesitate to reach out and ask more about what we can do, but just know ultimately your best friend is Purdue OWL, because it'll help you figure out how to do those in-text and works cited page citations. All right, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Any questions you have, send them my way. Thank you. Bye-bye.